A very warm welcome to you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks everybody and especially ICICI for having me here today. I'm equally excited and delighted to be amongst you today. And let's see how what the flow is today with Shilpa. Yeah.
It is indeed an honor and privilege. Ma'am, as you know, we have all our colleagues here. A few of us physically and the rest have joined us virtually. Ma'am, you were the first woman IPS officer to serve as a Director General of Police in Uttar Pradesh. With someone who had a keen interest in music and arts, you chose public services because you wanted to serve the people on a day-to-day basis. And what a journey you have had, ma'am. I would like everybody here to know about that journey. But with your permission, please allow me to read, because there are too many accomplishments for one to remember, and I don't want to miss any. Ma'am, you're the recipient of the Police Medal of Distinguished Services and Police Medal for Long and Meritorious Service from the Honorable President of India. With over 3 decades of demonstrated leadership experience with an acumen in public administration, you have implemented several innovative programs. I would like to quote some of those initiatives here. UP Police Mahila Samman Prakosht, an award-winning ISO certified police unit that worked to empower over 175 million women and children. You led many other initiatives like Akshaya, Navachetna, Rubaru, and Vikalp, India's first police web portal for reporting crimes against women and children. In addition to this, you have also led the state's anti-human trafficking efforts. You build close partnerships with international organizations like UNICEF. Your work has been recognized by the US Department of State and Interpol. You have been honored as an Indian woman leader by the British High Commission. You have been awarded the Indian Women Excellence Leadership Award by the BRICS International Conclave and the Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore Award by His Excellency Governor of Uttar Pradesh. Also, the FICCI FLO Award for Outstanding Policewoman. And it doesn't end here. You have a TEDx talk to your credit titled Be the CEO of Your Own Life, addressing India's next generation of women leaders. Currently, you serve as an independent consultant to the Kailash Satyarthi Children's Foundation. You are a consultant, an advisor, a trainer, and a speaker on leadership, gender and diversity, social inclusion, and public policy. Such a multifaceted leader, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ma'am. So to start with, ma'am, tell us about your journey as an IPS officer. How did you choose the career path? And like we discussed, at a time when not so many women were taking up work, you took up IPS. So that would have generated a lot of concerns and thoughts. Ma'am.
Well, let me take you back to the 1980s, right? Early 1980s. So I just completed my master's in economics. And you know, in those days, we didn't have so many professions. You just had a couple of them, right? You could either become a civil servant, or you could become a lecturer, you could become a lawyer, etc., you know, doctor, something like that. And then there was that mindset that women should go into just these things, right? So going with the flow, I completed my master's, as I said, in economics, and I started teaching in the Patna University. I belong to Bihar. I'm born and brought up in Bihar, right? So I start out with that. But then, you know, somewhere, see, IPS, it wasn't that clear. At that point of time, it was not that I had to enter the IPS. But I wanted to be in a space where I could be of use to people. I could bring about whatever little difference I could in their lives. Because coming from Bihar, I could see a lot of injustice around me. So somewhere that was there in my mind, right? And secondly, my father was in the Bihar Civil Services. So I constantly had that flow of stories from him, like how he did stuff here, helped there. So that was somewhere there in my subconscious mind. But then I became a lecturer, but then that UPSC thing was always there, that I need to place myself in that position. So I took the exams and I got into the IPS. Now UPSC has according to the rank you get the services. So once I got into the IPS, I said, okay, this is it. So I joined it. And as you said, the journey was not very easy because I came from a very conservative Bengali family. My schooling was in a very, very strict convent environment where, you had to have a particular length of the skirt also. You couldn't do what children do nowadays, they wear all kinds of school uniforms, right? So it was that strict, right? And we, unfortunately, we had co-education only up to class 3. Now, look what happens. See, somehow things catch up with you. I landed up in Hyderabad National Police Academy. And I'm coming from a very strict background, right? Where my, parents weren't too happy if I could go around and talk to all the boys in the colony where I stayed. So when I land there, I find there are 77 other officers who are all male. I was the only female probationer in the 1984 batch. So, it was a kind of cultural shock for me. It was difficult because I was not accustomed to it. So it was difficult there. When I go back to go to my cadre, that was UP, there also I find myself along with just 1 or 2 other women IPS officers. And not too many in the lower ranks also. Even today in police, you have around about, I think, 7 to 10% women in the police across all the ranks. So things were again difficult over there. And things were at times very comical also, like many people would come to see how a woman looked in uniform, right? They wouldn't, my own subordinates, colleagues, they wouldn't know how to address me. They would say, Madam, Sir, Bahanji, everything. Most of the mails I got, उस समय emails उतने नहीं हुआ करते थे. They used to be, physical letters and in any case, official emails were not there at all. So we had the letter. They would be addressed as Mr. Sutapa Sanyal. So that thing was absolutely not there, that, okay, there can be a woman who can also be a police officer. So these were the challenges which I started experiencing for the first time, because my education was very protected, my family life was very protected. So this sudden exposure brought me onto the front of things. And then Mr. Kannan, you spoke so much about diversity and inclusion. Yes, there was no diversity, right? Inclusion, forget completely. So it's true, and I'll be brutally honest about it, that for years together, I never felt as if I was a part of the police. Whenever there would be a decision to be made whether they should post a woman officer to head the district police force, those doubts would start working in their minds of the decision makers. Kar paegi ki nahi? Will she be able to control the crowd? How will she detect the crime? How will she lead a force which is largely male? Would they respect her? Would they respond to her? So these challenges were there right throughout. And at some point of time, again, I'll be truthful about it, it made me very angry. That, look, I have also gone through the same police training which my male colleagues have. Why am I being doubted at the moment? And these are challenges, women face everywhere. The degree may be different in a police force, but they face these things. They're always doubted whether they can do this or not do this. And unfortunately, somewhere, we as women, we kind of start internalizing all these. then self-doubt comes in somewhere. Am I good enough? Will I be able to do this? So it's a cyclical thing. So yes, there were comical moments in my career, but there were a lot of challenges because the environment was pretty tough and the training was tougher. Now, people think that the training may be easy, but it is one of the toughest trainings. Rather, where the postings are easier. Because in training, you have to get up around about 5 o'clock every day, go for parade, and then this, that, the whole day. You have, after your heavy physical exercise, you have a heavy breakfast, and then you have a long period of internal classes, where most of us would go off to sleep. It was impossible to stay awake. चाह के भी नहीं रह सकते थे, you know, because of the heavy physical labor. And you know, mind you, I came from a family where there was no sports. My proclivity was towards the academics, right? And towards, you rightly researched and found out, towards all uncop-like things. So, but my father was my constant companion in this journey of mine, entering the clearing the UPSC and opting for the IPS. But my mother was very skeptical. Because I believe at that point of time, she knew her daughter more than, you know, the daughter herself. But again, with me, you know, there has been this thing that I spend a lot of time, sufficient amount of time, deciding upon something. But once I have decided, then there is no going back. So I had decided that I had to go to IPS, no matter what. And so I convinced my mom and that everything would be okay. And of course, with my father's support, I think, yeah, I made into it.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am.
Yeah.
Ma'am, like you said, you used words like challenging, difficult, tough. That was your environment. But you still went on to what we say, break the glass ceiling. How did you do that, ma'am?
See, I think you need an attitude that, okay, challenges come in everybody's life, right? It's a different story that this profession may have a lot of challenges, and it's a very dynamic profession. Once you're in the field, things may be fine at this moment, but next moment a law and order situation can erupt, right? Next moment there can be a multiple murder case, which can also have its impact on so many things in that, in your district, in your area of jurisdiction. So that volatility is there in this service. But then see, one thing is we undergo a very tough training, because that changed my life completely. As I told you, my upbringing was in a different fashion, right? Academia, music, arts, this, that. But here, for 1 year, we are subjected to extremely tough training. And it's largely a physical training. So somewhere you are toughened up, that is one thing. So training matters everywhere. We think training doesn't matter, but it does. Like you yourself spoke about the trainings which you are having on unconscious bias and all. It would be making some difference. It has to. So that training made that difference. And then secondly, you know, as I said, if once I had decided that I am to stay in this profession, then I started building up, you know, my skills, which the profession further demanded. And that is very important for everyone out here. I would say you must build up your skills. Otherwise, it's very difficult, because you have to know your craft inside out, number one. Other things come later on. The hard skills have to be there. Soft skills also have to be acquired. And then, you know, Shilpa, I've always believed in the thought that वो कहते हैं ना कुर्सी सिखाती है इंसान को. So the chair you are sitting in will teach you a lot of things which you don't know. So the chairs I was sitting on, in police you have a lot of departments. Sometimes you are in the CID, you are doing investigation. Sometimes you are posted into the armed constabulary. I was posted 3 times as commandant of 3 provincial armed, we call it PSC. So these are the armed police who get deployed, say in a terrorist area or in the law and order. So it teaches you a lot of things, a variety of things. So I learned. And I always, I pride myself by saying that I'm a fast learner. I learned about emails and I learned about so many things in the digital world after my children went off to the US to study. Honestly, I didn't know how to send a email, but it was my compulsion. I had no other way to communicate with them. So many things you learn out of compulsion. It's said that necessity is the mother of invention. Compulsion is also the mother of learnings, experiences. So that was another thing. And then, I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, as a woman, I had to work doubly and triply hard to prove myself. That was there. I see a lot of women nodding, so that is true. We actually have to, work very hard. Because largely the mindset is, it's, these are schemas, I would say, and stereotypes that, okay, a woman can't do this, can't do that. And I'm talking of the 80s. Things have changed a lot. So much water has flown down the bridge, right? But during those days, it was that, okay, it was taken, it was granted that this woman cannot do this. So there was that constant churning inside me. But I have to prove myself. I can't fail. If I have come this far, I have to go further. So that was there. And I don't know, I hope I've answered your question.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for sharing. That's been inspiring. Ma'am, you spoke about your teams, and you just mentioned that you had a lot of diverse teams. You had male subordinates and females. What has been your experience in leading these diverse teams? And what would you advise an organization like ours? What can we do more to manage such diverse teams?
See, I think in one word, every leader, I think, has to walk the talk, right? So, and as a leader, I've learned there are a couple of things which are given, right? Like I learned, because remember, I was dealing with a largely all-male force for whom having a woman as a leader was not a very common thing. So one thing I found which worked always was knowing your craft well. I mean, never should I have given and would I have given them the opportunity to think that how will she lead us if she doesn't know her work, right? So knowing your craft well and getting it across to them also that yes, you know your craft well, right? Because our force was a very hierarchical thing. There isn't too much of an interaction between the SP of a district and the constable of a police station. But somehow you have to let them know through your interactions that, okay, you are one amongst them, and yet you have the capacity to guide them in their work. So that was there, knowing my craft well and being fair to people. Fairness is one thing which is very important and which touches everybody. If in the same circumstances you are partial to one person, right, and you punish the other person, it will be noticed. And you will lose the trust of your own people. So you have to be very careful in giving rewards and punishments, right? Reward should be exemplary and punishment should be exemplary too, but both must be fair. Thirdly, what I understood is, there are times in everybody's life, Shilpa, when we have our bad days, right? You need to reach out to your people. I remember there was this sub-inspector, woman sub-inspector, when I was DG Mahila Samman Prakosht. She was a very good worker, but she was having certain domestic problems, issues with her husband. And unfortunately, she used to ride a scooty and she used to come from a long distance. She met with a bad accident, right? And she couldn't come to work. She was a very good worker. And we all liked her, the way she dealt with the survivors and victims who used to come to the office. And all. So I made it a point to appoint somebody, to task one other female inspector to go and check out with her every evening in the hospital. And you won't believe that created a sense of belongingness in her. And she came back with double vigor. She was a good worker, but she felt she belonged to that place and that she should give her optimal best. So this is one other thing which I learned. This is a practical leadership example. I have not studied in any B school, right? My line has been totally different. But these are things which experience taught me. You have to walk the talk. You have to see, okay, now I was in a profession where unfortunately, if I smiled a lot, it was taken as a weakness. My question is, why do you need to be grumpy and grouchy, a grumpy and grouchy leader anywhere? Right? You must retain your humanness. Because you're not dealing with bots, you're dealing with people. So I question this all the time. And in corporates, there are more occasions to show this. But even in police, I found out occasions when I could connect with my people. There were such occasions when they felt, no, there is a human being behind this uniform, behind this officer. Many people question me because I do a lot of speaking and talking and all this. I go to a lot of places. So someone told me that you talk of mainstreaming women in the police department. The women are so abusive in the police stations. They meant the constables at the police stations. So why do you talk of taking in more women into the police? Then, but I'm dealing with diversity, inclusion. So it occurred to me, in fact, why do women police officers abuse in the police station? Can anyone tell me? Yeah, please. Exactly. They are trying to mirror what the male officers are doing there. They feel that if they show their softer side, if they don't do that gali galoch, they'll be excluded. But this is the beauty of diversity. This is what needs to be explained. That you bring in your unique qualities. You don't have to become like the other person. Then where is their diversity? So you're absolutely right. So that's why, I keep talking about these things. Somebody asked, I think Shilpa asked me, I've got so much from this society, I've got so much from universe. If it's my time to pay back, I jolly well do it, right? So these are the things which, after all, these are the things which touch the people who you're trying to lead. They want to see a human being behind the boss.
Right, ma'am. That was inspiring. Thank you. Ma'am, you spoke about women and their life stage junctures. So sometimes it becomes challenging for them to manage their careers with these life stage junctures. How would you advise, or what would you advise women to do to manage them better?
I think many people talk of work-life balance. That's the.
Right.
I think it's more important to think of work-life harmony. You can't go around measuring, with a balance work and life, but harmony, right? So, of course, in the IPS, you are privileged to have people who work for you, right? Many women don't have that privilege, right? So one thing which I can only speak from my experience, right? If it resonates with, it might resonate with many of you. One thing which I tried to do was not to bring work home or take my home to the office, right? Most of the times I tried that. But then when you have young children, it becomes difficult. During our times, we didn't have such a huge child care leave, which you get nowadays. About a year you get, I think, at least in the government services. It can add up to 1 year or 2 years probably. We had that typical maternity leave, right? So there were times when I had to carry my daughter, take my daughter with me to the office, right? But then I made sure that she would be sitting in a different room and having her own toys to play with and a bed to sleep whenever she wanted. So again, it's not a clear-cut division, but most of the times I tried not to mix up the two. So I did have helping hands at home. And I would also tell the women out here that if you are working, don't feel guilty about not being able to be with your children all the time. They understand. Children are very smart. They understand. I'll just quote a small incident. My daughter, we had a lot of tours. We had to go out. Traveling was there. So she would tell me before I would go that whenever you come back, bring something for me, some small thing. It doesn't matter that you buy something very expensive, just get a pencil or an eraser for me. So, it was her way of connecting with my travels. It was her way of coping about my absence, and I used to oblige her. We feel guilty at times, and although most of the times I managed my career and being with my children well, there is one other incident which, actually shook me. My daughter's birthday is on 10th of August, right? So I came back late. I was in the CID. So investigation, you have to read a lot of papers and you have to connect stuff, this, that. So it became very late that evening and I came back and I found her standing at the door crying. So I thought something must have happened. So she says, "How could you forget my birthday? Today is my birthday." And then it suddenly dawned on me, yes, it was her birthday today. And then that outburst. She remained calm while she told me this, and then she started crying. So I had to placate her, take her. I said, okay, let's go and get this, that. So those are times, when you do feel guilty that, okay, you're leaving behind your daughter. She may be missing her mother. And, with nuclear families, these are big issues. If you have joint families, you always have a grandmother or a grandfather to dote on children. But then again, children are very smart. We think they don't imbibe things, but they imbibe, and they do find out ways and means of coping with your absence. So with women out here, please don't feel guilty about you going and working. You can make a qualitative difference to their lives. Think of it that way. So that is one aspect. Another thing which I feel is, as women, and as caregivers, largely it's still expected that the woman is the caregiver. We stop caring for ourselves. That won't work. I wish somebody would have taught me all these things, told me about all these things during my service years. But at this end of the spectrum, I can understand these things. So self-care is very, very important. I don't want to quote that cliched thing that in the aircraft you're supposed to put your own oxygen. That's it's pretty cliched, but I think self-care is very important. Because if you don't, you can't pour from a, half-filled cup. Your own cup has to be full first. That increases your ability to help others also. So these are certain ways, and one other thing which I have found, whatever I'm saying are things which I have found helpful, right? So another thing which I have found very, very helpful, which often we miss out, is what is called the gratitude exercise, right? Every day, every morning, every evening, I look around myself and I see I have so many things. I may not have so many things, but I have so many things also. So if I have an attitude of gratitude towards life, towards all that universe has given me, I think I will operate from a space of abundance rather than a space of scarcity, right? So when I feel I have so much around me, so much abundance around me, I will be willing to give. And when you give, somehow I feel it's karma, it will come back to you. So it's very important to understand these things, right? These are all there in our Shastra and all, but we don't look at it because Shastra has become an issue of a religion, and religion is inflammatory. To talk of religion is inflammatory. But these are spiritual exercises. It's irrespective of what religion you come from, what you believe, what you practice. Because, ultimately I feel we are more of the spirit. The body is just a means. We are, it's around us. The core is our spirit. And spiritual laws would be the same for everybody, no matter who we are and where we come from. So these have been kind of thoughts, these have been principles which have been guiding me, and I take every opportunity to pass these thoughts to whoever I'm addressing, whoever I'm talking of. If it resonates with you, then please adopt it. If it doesn't resonate with you, you can surely find other tools which will help you. Because each one of us is unique, right? So yes, these are the things which guide me in my day-to-day. I feel so happy, at our age, at my age, just to be able to stay alive, get up in the morning is so much of a blessing. I get 24 hours to do what I want to do. I get 24 hours to live the way I want to live and make whatever little difference I can in the lives of people who I interact with. It's so, you think that way, it's so much of a blessing. I may not have tomorrow at my disposal. So I think a little bit of a shift in perspective is required at every stage of life. It's very important. Otherwise, you will just, go through your lifespan. You won't ever grow. All of us need to grow. Even today, I need to grow. I need to grow out of my biases. Talking of unconscious bias, I'll tell you, I was, this is years back, when Indigo had started its all-women flight, the pilot and the co-pilot, crew was always largely women. So I was in one of these flights way back, and I was just going through the, they have those in-flight magazines, right? So this announcement came that today your pilot is MS so-and-so and the co-pilot is MS so-and-so. I have been working on diversity issues. I have been, an unapologetic gender advocacy thing, right? For a moment I thought, oh my God, what would happen if there is some mechanical trouble? And then immediately I corrected myself that so what? You were also there when you stepped into the district. These women have also had the same training as their male counterparts. So you see, we all have these unconscious biases, but as long as we are not aware of them, we will never change. But after that, I felt very comfortable. So we all have these demons inside our minds, and we have to work on them. Otherwise, we'll never become better human beings. But we are supposed to be smart human beings, right? We are also animals, but we are smarter of all the animals, smartest. So we need to do all these things. It's just a perspective. You rewire your brain, you become a new person. It's so funny. It's that easy, and it's that difficult.
That is perspective for us.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that deserves a huge round of applause, everybody.
Thank you. I hope what I'm saying is making sense. But all that I'm saying is actually what I'm practicing. And I see a change in myself. I do. So I feel people in similar circumstances, similar, not identical. I think it will help you, but of course you need to do the tweakings, because my background may not be your background, your family situation may not be my family situation. But broadly, these principles should be there.
Ma'am, it has been great listening to you. Just to switch a bit, considering you were mentioning your work and your work environment was challenging, but what kind of a person are you beyond work? What are the interests you pursue after getting home after a tough day? What would you be doing?
Well, my daughter-in-law finds me a very funny person. So I don't know. But yes, I have a lot of interests. I've always had a lot of interests, and they're mainly, it's music. And it's catharsis for me, let me tell you. Initially, it was classical instrumental music, but now it is, I play an instrument which is called the electric Hawaiian guitar, right? Not very much in vogue today, because the Spanish thing is in vogue. It's not this one, that steel guitar. I do a lot of reading up of these books, spiritual books. I practice a lot of them. And then I love talking about diversity, inclusion, and one other thing, you know, many places I have gone, and it may be my profession, but I have never taken up anything which I have not really liked, right? So I do a lot of these posh trainings, and you know, that question comes up, that it's all woman-centric law and this and that, and many women, you know, put false allegations against men, all that. So explaining the difference, clearing out the gray areas in that act is a kind of a big engagement for me. Because I feel workspaces, apart from being equal, they should be happy spaces to work in. How can you work, or how can you achieve your optimal self or optimal best if you're always unhappy? I don't think you can. And you know, willy-nilly, larger part of a working woman's day is spent in the office. And for that matter, a working person's life also. So though I try to make these spaces happy wherever I go. And I love traveling. I love seeing the world. I love meeting people. So that's it. And I write.
Your favorite place to travel?
Sorry?
Which would be your favorite place to travel?
Favorite place? I think it would be Europe. It's beautiful.
Architecture,
Very beautiful. Very beautiful. You have so many various things. Much more beautiful than the US. But then in India also we have a lot of beautiful spaces. Lots of beautiful places. But the upkeep is a big question in our country. We, sorry to say, we tend to litter everywhere we go. In Andamans, I found a very smart thing they did, it was a couple of years back. If you are taking a bottle of water, at that time, you had to deposit 100 rupees. And if you bring back that bottle, you are given back that 100 rupees. Now see, there's such a disproportionate sequence between the cost of the bottle and the money you're supposed to deposit. So everybody brought back the bottle. And so the Andaman beaches were very clean.
Right.
So yes, we have a lot of beautiful places here also. But then yes, Europe stands out.
Ma'am, we'll now invite questions from the audience.
Yeah, sure, yes.
Sneha, if you could help us.
Please feel free to ask. And I hope I'm able to answer your questions.
Yeah, good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Yeah.
So that was very inspiring talk actually, and many of which I could relate to in terms of philosophy. I had the opportunity to visit an all-women police station in Kanyakumari, and the way they welcomed us, they thought we have come to register some complaint, but we just wanted to, I had a long wish to see that, and the way they are managing it, and they welcomed me and my family. It was really, I could see how it is working. And they had, I think, 6-7 such in Kanyakumari district. So it was very, so I think more participation in women in at least police force and is very welcome. It actually creates a lot of differences in the talk that you're giving. It creates a kind of a human touch that comes in an area which is largely considered to be very violent, very negative, and really zaps you out throughout the day. My question to you is, to be CEO of your own life, you said, TED Talk. I see my day, in the morning and evening, it is like starting with compromises, ending with compromises. You win some, you lose some. Where you can think you can win, you do that. And otherwise, you start looking at what is the power equations and where you fit. Then, in that context, to be CEO of my life, how is it possible? What do you mean by it?
Oh, that's a very deep question, right? But we have different contexts, right? But at the end of the day, you have your own will. You have choices. You can choose to only look at and follow things which are going to bring material benefit to you, right? Or you can choose things which are going to help in self-actualization, non-material things. Or you can choose a via media where you have trade-off between both, right? Choice will be yours. We all have a will, free wills. But what I feel is, it's a decision which you have to take. Nobody can force you into a decision. And this is for the women employees also. You can consult. You can have role models. You can have templates. But make sure that you decide, and I think one underlying, the bottom line is, you should be happy about your decisions. A, your decision should make you happy. And second, you should not cause hurt to anybody. these have been my guiding principles. I have had to make trade-offs. I have had to make choices like what you are saying. And I'll give you one example. When my children were small, I purposely chose, and when they were studying, right, I purposely chose not to go out of Lucknow. Because in UP, that was one district which had good education. So it was a choice. Now, if I make a choice in one direction, I have to leave a couple of things on the other side. But what gave me happiness was nobody dictated that choice. Because if somebody dictated it, I would have been unhappy. So life is all about choices, the choices you make. And when you make well-informed choices, they give you happiness. When you make choices out of your own volition, they give you happiness. So that is one bottom line for me, and I think it will be for everybody. Now the choices, the environment for making these choices will be different. So for you, you need to choose, okay, today, if I do this, I'll get more of this, less of that, or more of this, less of this. But that is your choice. You can consult. But ultimately, you know, we have to live with ourselves most of the time. So if I'm unhappy with the person I'm living with most of the time, if I'm unhappy with me, with myself, where do I go? So that is something, all the variables I cannot fit about your situation, but broadly had I been in your place, this is what I would have done. What would be good for my family and what would bring me happiness? This would be my choice. And I think we all can figure out, you know, it's not that इतना बड़ा rocket science भी नहीं है कि क्या करने से खुशी मिलती है and क्या. Only thing is you shouldn't be hurting people. No, that is not admissible. It's not acceptable. But you have every right to look for your happiness. Why not? Does that answer a little bit of what you are asking? Thank you. Anything else? I think, yeah.
Sneha,
the lady
mic
here.
here.
Thank you for sharing your journey, ma'am. How were you able to integrate more women in the forces? And when and how did you start this entire discussion on diversity and inclusion in the forces?
See, if you look deeply enough, I'm doing more or less the same thing I was doing when I was in service, right? So what was I doing then? I was, number one, trying to, this is the state of UP, right, I'm talking of. So when actually I had gone back from a deputation to GAIL India Limited. I was advisor security over there. So when I go back, there were a lot of very unfortunate crimes which had happened. One particular thing which was a trigger for me was, you know, every Friday, as I was heading the economic offences wing, which had nothing to do with women's security or child safety or human trafficking, right? It's a different genre altogether. So all the heads of these different police departments, we used to meet the DGP of the state on every Friday. So what happened on one of these Fridays, there was a small write-up in the Times of India which spoke of the Magh Mela. Magh Mela is a very big thing in UP, in Allahabad and the easternmost regions. And the news was very strange. The news was that early morning on one of these Magh Mela days, a jeep full of men and women came to the Ganges. They dragged out the women from the jeep and they put them in the water and they started beating them up with iron chains. That was the news that day. So when, you know, you have patrikas out there. So one of them went up and asked that, what are you doing? Then the men said कि ये हमारी परिवार की महिलाएं हैं और हम लोग इनका भूत भगा रहे हैं. So that incident, you know, it just shook me up. So that very day, I went to the DGP and I told him, sir, I have just 3 years, nearly 3 years left of my service. Can we do something exclusively for the women of this state? I'm willing to head a very small division, but I want that we think about 360-degree about the safety and security of women. The children came much later to my mind. It was initially the women, because this is what I was reading. Day in and day out, this is what was happening. I had nothing to do with it. I was in the economic offences wing, which does not look into law and order, etc. So he said, yes, let's go to the CM and let's talk. So, and he asked me to make a proposal. So I made a rough proposal. Then somehow the government accepted it. And it was named, I suggested the name Mahila Samman Prakosht, UP Mahila Samman Prakosht. And then, it's very strange, but the 9 programs, some of the verticals which Shilpa spoke of, I started designing these programs. I spoke to cross-section of UP. I would talk to the professors, I talked to school teachers, I talked to what is your concept about women's security? And all these things, they just flowed through my mind and took the shape of these 9 verticals. So that is how we set this up. But in the process, it was a very difficult process which I underwent at that time. Maybe I was thinking a bit ahead, because these programs were based on public-private partnership, which was not a very known thing at that time. And I was trying to do community policing. I was trying to involve the community, because it was there in my head that if the community could be involved, right, there would be a pressure kind of thing on the mind of perpetrators, and women would feel safer if they could talk about their problems, if they could get somebody who could talk about their problems on their behalf. So when you see those programs, you'll always see there is a merger of citizens and the police. You're just always there in those 9 programs. So this is something which was very new to UP. I didn't get much support, especially from my own department, right? People understood what I was doing. They would come to me and say, women would come to me, because I left the door of my office open, my own room. I never closed the door. So they would say that for the first time we are seeing an officer, a police officer who keeps the door open, who is always available. I said, this is what you need. This is what we are here for. We are all a part of service. It's Indian police service. It is Indian administrative service. Why do we forget the service component? So these things were there on my mind when I was designing all these programs. And, I had my own ways of people, coming and telling me things which made my day. Like this woman who came and told me this, that made my day. That was enough for me to, it was sustainable, to sustain me in my efforts. Then again, I remember, now that we are talking about it, I was posted as the Senior Superintendent of Police of Kanpur. So, and Kanpur is a very sensitive district, communally also. I don't know if there are people from UP who would be knowing, and all kinds of problems are there. So in the evening, generally, I used to sit in the office and do my, all the letters and the paperwork, right? So this gentleman comes to me, an elderly person. He comes and says that I'm being troubled by so-and-so. My son is abroad and I'm all alone and this and that. So, it was a routine type of stuff. So I said, please give me your application, because I need something from you in writing so that I can take some action. So he gave something and he left. And then I called, we have these readers, who are supposed to get things implemented. So I called him and said, here's this gentleman, he has some property issues, please go and see. So whatever needed to be done was done. Now this gentleman comes back to me some other evening. I'm doing the same thing that evening. He comes and even without looking up, and you don't remember because you have so many people coming with so many problems. So I said, have a seat, and I kept on writing. Then he sat there, he didn't say anything. Then, I suddenly, felt uncomfortable that why is he not saying anything? So I just looked up, and he said that you wouldn't remember, but I had come and there's this thing. And then, he said a very, very heartwarming thing. He tells me that I wish I had a daughter like you. So these are the rewards. These are the rewards of your work. So, and I also remember, when I started this now to talk about the human being behind the uniform. When I started out with this Mahila Samman proposed work, I had a lot of very little staff was given to me. That was another reason why I was reaching out to the citizens, because I had no resources. I wanted to do so many things. So there's this deputy superintendent of police. She's also a female. So, women came with their problems, and, that was the first time I realized that women have so much of problems. I was in the police, but I was truly, truly unaware of the level of problems which Indian women face, and maybe in a state of UP, right? So they would come with their problems, and, when they would go away, this deputy SP of mine and me, we were all teared up. We would sit there and cry. Then she told me, ma'am, aise kaise kaam chalega? And I said, yes, you are right. I was also holding 2 other posts. So I said that, look, for 10-15 days, hum idhar nahi aayenge. Tum samhalo. I'll be sitting in my other office. Let me recoup. Let me center myself. Because when you are dealing with all these negative energies, you have to build your boundary. Otherwise, you can't work. You have to center yourself, right? So she said, okay. So 15 days I didn't come to my office. And then when I came back, I said, you go away for 15 days now. It's very difficult. We live in, insulated environments. We don't know. Our little problems trouble us so much. Go out into the world and see how much people are suffering. So these are the things, but unless you empathize, unless you are compassionate, you will not do anything. Otherwise, every person will be a piece of paper for you. So that empathy is very important. And as leaders, especially in the post-COVID period, we don't know who is suffering what at home, who has lost the dear ones. So we need compassion. It's very important. So that is one other thing which I learned.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, at the back. Yeah, I can see you.
It's been a real pleasure and really inspiration, hearing you today morning. Something I just wanted to, ask you, that when you were talking about your growing years in the career, it would have been a little lonely because you didn't have too many women colleagues around you. It's not that male colleagues don't support us. They do go out of their way sometimes to, make us inclusive during the office hours. But I wanted to understand from you that, there are certain informal gatherings where people tend to gather around and talk about work. How did, in your experience, in these kind of situations, as a leader, as you grew, how were you able to, be a part of maybe a male-dominated kind of a setup.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. See, it's not that we don't have enlightened men amongst us, right? We have our fathers, we have our husbands, we have our brothers who can be equally sensitive. It's an issue of how sensitive you are, right? So there would be men who want women to go ahead, right? Their own families, their colleagues in the office. But there is an issue of peer pressure also. Many men don't talk about it because they feel they would be laughed at, right? They would be ridiculed. So I think as an organization and as women, we must promote this allyship. We must also help them. And you know, we talk of the girl child, we forget the male child. We talk of all the problems which women have, we forget the problems which men face. Unfortunately, in our country, you know, men have to shoulder a lot of psychological issues also, because they are supposed to be the providers. Even today, if there is a job opening, the idea is the male person in the family should have that job. Why? Because in many families in the rural areas and in the urban, semi-urban areas, the thought process is that the male person of the family has not been able to provide for the family, and therefore the woman has to go out to work. It's a convoluted state of mind, state of consciousness, but it is there. We have to acknowledge all these things. That narrative about men should not cry, boys should not cry, men should not express their emotions. Tell me why they shouldn't. Why are you making them half human beings? Let men and women become full human beings. Let them become more. Let them realize their, ultimate best. Let them go wherever they go with their authentic selves. Why do we want men not to have emotions and women to have all the emotions in the world? So this is where we all have to join hands and break these biases, break these stereotypes, break these schemas. These are all schemas, they are not real. But we are making them a part of our lives and suffering. Men also suffer. So we also, if we can, we must also help them in realizing themselves, in having confidence that no, even if it is a woman's issue, a woman colleague's issue, I can advocate for her. So that is what allyship is all about. And we need these partnerships, not just at home, we need it in the workplace also. Does it answer your question?
Absolutely, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
I think we have time for one last question. Yeah, there, please. Sonali.
Hello, ma'am. Hi, Shilpa. Here.
May I please raise?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, of course, all of us know that, police protects citizens at a lot of occasions. My personal interaction with police so far is limited only to passport verification process. But I could relate. I mean, I really loved your journey and I could relate to everything that you said. So my question to you, ma'am, is, because police really knows who the troublemakers of the city are. And
They should know.
Yeah, they should know. They exactly know who the Gali Ka Gunda is. So, based on that, I mean, how much of your role and experience was doing certain things proactively for the citizens and protecting them, and how much of your role was based on certain complaints or dealing with the complaints?
So I have been in different roles. I have also been posted. So you need to understand that the police has one segment which is the local police. The guy who will come to your office for verification, maybe the local police or maybe the intelligence people coming. We have these different departments. So local police, the guys who you see in the police station, they are the ones who are dealing with the day-to-day crimes and day-to-day law and order issues. Then you have the investigation agencies also. So that is within the police, but it's a different department. So whenever I have been posted as the district police chief, I have done a couple of districts, I had to look after the law and order and the crime. So there you actively, proactively, you have to attend to these things. Because you're supposed to lead the whole setup, the whole system, who's looking into these things, right? But when I was talking of the Mahila Samman Prakosht, it was something which I was trying to set up as a parallel unit which would help the local police in dealing with issues related to women in a much better and in a more sensitive manner. Because as, you know, when somebody, I think you addressed it in your, this thing that the police is dealing with the worst of society, right? Criminals. All the time there is always a negative. Negative vibes are always flowing. That is why I said centering yourself is very important. But unfortunately, in the police department, you don't have too many courses of stress management. That person, that constable, his children do not meet him. He leaves before they wake up. He goes back after they go to sleep. He has nothing to do with their education. The wife is looking after everything. Then there are tutors. So you just imagine that person's mindset. He's so lost. He's a lost soul. Let me put it that way. And then all these, you know, dysfunctional behaviors start coming in. So that's why I said training is so important. In police, it's thought to be a useless item. But that is something which centers you, that is something which tells you about your craft, how much it has advanced, how it can be changed, not only to help the people, but to help yourself too. Because again, I said, you can't pour from a half-empty cup. That is what they're doing day in and day out. And that is why that behavior. So these are things which as leaders of the force, we need to think about these things. And unfortunately, in theory, it may not be in practice, a police personnel is on duty 24/7 into 365. You think, you just put yourself in that person's shoes. It's a dehumanizing experience. And that is why large part of their misbehavior, large part of their failures is because of this. We are erasing the human component in policing. We need to do humanitarian policing, not only for the citizens, but also for the police personnel. So that it's a win-win situation for everybody. When everybody wins, you move one notch higher. So yeah, thank you for bringing up this question. I've always looked at it this way. And that small, community of police person who were working in the Mahila Samman Prakosht, we made it a thing. We made it mandatory. Like, when Mahila Samman Prakosht started earning all these awards, they were from non-police organizations. So I made it a point to take my team along with me to receive the award, and I would rotate. And they were so happy receiving the award jointly at Ashoka Hotel in Delhi or somewhere else. They had never seen this world. So you have to give them vision. You have to give them a new world. And they were so happy working. I never had any problem with any of them. Even if I asked them, stay there till 12 o'clock, is cheez ko khatam karna, they were happy working. So that is it, you know. And you can do things differently. You can be a very bad, I'm not here to praise myself, but what I'm saying is we need different perceptions, we need different perspectives all the time. And these perspectives, these rewiring of our neural pathways has to be done all the time. We think once we have, learned X, Y, Z, that's going to last us our whole lifetime. No, they won't. And post-COVID, things have changed so much. A leader, as I said, has to be compassionate. Then you'll get the best out of the people who you're working with. Then they'll feel belongingness over there. Then they will feel, no, I come every day, I'm able to add value to ICICI. It's a different level altogether. Rather than people coming like bots and going back home like bots. No. And in any case, it's said that tomorrow, if AI takes over everything, they may not be able to take over the emotion and the creativity. So that we need to leverage. Right? Being intelligent beings, we need to leverage that. We shouldn't forget it, whether it is in a corporate setup or whether it is in the police, we need to remember it. Then the best outcomes will come. Anything else?
Yes, ma'am. Before we close, we have one last question.
Yeah.
What is your view on the new generation with respect to their orientation to diversity and inclusion?
No, I feel the new generation is smart, far smarter than our generation. And especially I've seen when children, they pass out of their 12th and, they are going for graduation, and once they have finished their graduation and they are going in for jobs, they read up a lot about where they are going. And I have a hunch that they are looking for, equal opportunities employers. They are looking for workspaces where they'll feel included. They are looking for workspaces where there is no discrimination. So they are looking at these things. And diversity and larger part, the inclusion part, there have been companies which have lost in their stock value because of all kinds of wrong policies. I was just talking to, I think, a couple of you. Starbucks had to close one of their outlets for 1 day or 1 or 2 days to train their people, because one of them had written a very derogatory name on one of those glasses of coffee, those paper glasses of coffee, which was being served to a Mexican somewhere in the US. So this is it. People, we all have a sense of self-esteem. When that is hurt, I don't know. I wouldn't like to work for such an organization where my, value is not recognized, where people are always hurting my self-image, my self-esteem. I don't think any of us would like to work. Money is one thing, but we are not all money. Money can buy most of the things, but it can't buy everything. And that everything is relationship, that everything is the humanness, that everything is the self-esteem. And an employee who comes to a workspace without self-esteem won't be able to deliver. So these things, they are looking at
Right.
it. And they should look at it,
Right.
right?